So anything that you provide technology leaders within the CTO Academy sphere anyway, it has to deliver some value for the time that they're giving to it.
So we have three categories. Who am I? Computer accessory, quite an interesting new category that I've slipped into this one, and spacecraft.
I think there is something just with the thing of building something on your own, spending some time scratching your own itches.
So Sanjay, I tell you what, how was the Christmas, by the way?
Good, tiring, lots of food. So good. That's a good win, right?
That's ticked every Christmas box. I have to say, I love everything about Christmas. Particularly, it's the only time that I can legitimately eat mince pies. You know, if you're scoffing mince pies in the middle of July, it's just not acceptable socially, is it?
So are you mince pie by itself or mince pie and custard?
No, give me both, but I can take either in isolation, let me tell you. Welcome, everybody. Great to see you all. Thank you for joining me, my CTO and I, Sanjay Mistry, my wonderful co-host, and I, sponsored, of course, by our lovely friends at RP Analytics. If you're looking for data professionals, they are definitely the guys to go to. Very big in the UK, about to expand into Europe. We thank you, Liam and Rob, very much for sponsoring this humble little podcast of ours, Sanjay. Just a quick caveat about what's ahead. We've actually had to record this edition across the Christmas break. It's been difficult getting everybody together. So you are going to see a variety of fashion statements and lighting sets, and so it does look a bit disconnected, which it definitely was. So that's just to prepare you for that. Okay, a couple of things, Sanjay, before we launch into the quiz, which of course everybody is waiting for with bated breath. New Year's resolutions. I'll ask you two questions, any that have dropped off already and any that you are confident they're going to stick.
So I do goals rather than resolutions. So I have three goals for this year. One is to help someone every month, right? Which is just, doesn't have to be professionally, but just kind of help them beyond and spend some of my own time. My second one is to get my blue belt in jiu-jitsu. And my third one is to learn to do the splits, because I was getting pretty good at the end of last year. So the one that will definitely fail is the splits. I think that's pretty much guaranteed. But it's the first one that's really important to me, just helping people. And, and I've done a lot in January, just outside of the work sphere. And yeah, it brings a really good feeling to your heart.
No, I love that. I'm assuming helping me, get through this podcast every month it doesn't tick that box. You're talking about something different.
No, I'm talking about something different. But I'm here for you as well, Andrew.
Well, you're very kind. Well, I mean, to be honest, most of mine are health, better diet, better fitness. I had a few little, middle-aged male injuries last year, which I'm trying to avoid. So that's good. But also my big resolution this year is to finally launch my new board game. So for those of you who are interested, there's going to be a Kickstarter campaign launched for the new board game, which I will. There will no doubt be publicity anywhere related to CTO Academy on that, so I'll keep you updated. Really interesting chat in the fireside chat, Sanjay, with Luca Rossi, who I have a lot of time and a lot of love for Luca. The only negative I have about Luca is that I went over to see him in Rome, my first ever visit to the Eternal City, and he took me to the worst pizza restaurant I could possibly imagine. That was very disappointing.
How's that possible?
Exactly. That was exactly what I said to him as I scoffed this dreadful piece of pizza. But Luca was the fireside chat. Give us some context.
So what an interesting guy. That's number one. He's built this community on the side and it's skyrocketed, which is phenomenal. But it's his attitude, the way he drives it, the way, he spends a little bit of time every day. And I think that approach just in life, it's just fantastic. So I think you're going to love the conversation. I think our audience will love the conversation. So yeah, I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. And anybody, we got our own community at CTO Academy, and anybody who's tried to build a community from scratch, it's really hard. It's really hard work. And particularly I think certainly from our perspective for technology leaders, because everybody is time poor. So anything that you provide technology leaders within the CTO Academy sphere, anyway, it has to deliver some value for the time that they're giving to it. And so when you have to have early advocates. We've got some around the world who helped us grow the community just by being engaged with it and feeding back and giving people a response when they posted things. Because it's really hard to get traction. You have the really hardcore advocates and enthusiasts. You have what I call the lurkers who get lots of value from it, but are kind of in the background. But the vast majority of people aren't that engaged. And so to make them engaged is quite challenging. And I always think, and I'd be really interested to see what Luca says about this, but I always think that it's a bit like building a business. You've got to put the guardrails in place at the beginning that you, if it scales, are the cement that, the culture, the expectations, the norms. Because if you don't put those in place at the beginning, all hell can break loose with it, particularly within communities and the way that people use them. So it's a challenging thing to do. And that's why Luca's achievements are phenomenal.
Yeah, no, agreed. And look, it's got to be a safe space, and there's got to be value for the people within the, and that's what I look for, right? So yeah, I agree, and I think Luca's story is just phenomenal. So,
all right, well, more of that to come. But without further ado, the quiz that you've all been waiting for.
You really, really need to get out more.
Now, in the rich history of this quiz, of which there have so far been 7 editions, we've had Johannesburg take on London. We had New York take on Manchester. We had a mighty Canadian-American clash between Calgary and San Francisco. But today, I think as the crow flies, there is but 4 kilometers between our 2 guests today. So I'm going to welcome very much a warm welcome to Sandeep Kaur and Jeremy McDonald. Welcome both.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Good to see you. Good to see you. I think I've got this right. I think unless you tell me that you're located somewhere else in the world, I think there's only 4 kilometers. Sandeep, tell us a little bit about your role and current challenges.
Hi, I'm Sandeep Kaur, and I've been working in Tokio Marine International for last 2 years. I'm working as head of Pega practice. So it's the practice where I'm leading Pega engineers and Pega senior, Pega principal engineers. So Pega is a platform for business process management and business process automation. It's a low code for workflow development. And my top 3 challenges since I joined are really, first is legacy modernization, where lifting and shifting applications from on-premise onto cloud, Azure or AWS. That's been one of the biggest challenge, because from business side, technology benefits, if you just mention that you will have better DR or much higher availability and other technical things, then it doesn't really translate into direct business benefits. So that has been my first biggest challenge, right? And second is because I'm a manager of resources developers, so continuously encouraging them for learning, trainings, upskilling, promoting a culture of really knowledge sharing about Pega platform best practices. That has been my second biggest challenge. And third is about really fostering better collaboration between offshore, onshore, given that the time window is reduced between both the locations, and offshore developers are working way more in background than onshore engineers, and then having a better collaboration. So I came out with departmental practice as 2 things. As one is community of practice. So set a community of practice which is spanning across all projects, programs, products, and development streams. And then the center of excellence team, which is creating better governance standards, best practices, and passing them out to all wider community and engineers.
So I have a quick question, because the legacy migration is a conversation I have all the time. I was actually having it over the weekend, and it was exactly what you said. So taking infrastructure that's hosted internally and moving it to the cloud. What's the one bit of advice? So just one bit of advice that you found as a success to get the business commitment?
So there are a couple of things that find out whether really your legacy is going out of support or your hardware or even your software platforms may go out of support, your extended support may expire. That would be a driving factor for cloud strategy from business approval side, right? And then work on a business case with your partners, really have a solid business case and walk business through. And I have been having at least 5 to 7 iterations I had to have with business. And in first few, they'll be brutal. You would have to, gradually, make their mind really, and then you will get the success. But it's not going to happen in first or second attempt. You got to keep revising your strategy, work with your partner, work with other industry leaders, have some go through some blogs, and you need to have a solid presentation, really solid material. Because just saying, okay, I've got Kubernetes in cloud, or I've got a full high availability, 99.99% availability, that's not going to cut for business. If they would be spending millions, there has to be a solid business reason, a solid business case.
Lovely. Thank you, Sandeep. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Jeremy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Jeremy McDonald. I'm the Group Director of Technology at a company called Hanson Wade. I guess in that, I'm responsible, as I see it, for 3 areas. First, I see as business technology, which is essentially the laptops, the network, through to the numerous pieces of software and SaaS services that we use to run our business. I think I was doing budgeting earlier this week, and I counted up 68 different companies that I get invoices, have budgets for. So it's quite a lot to manage there. Second piece I was responsible for is our data and insights. We've recently built a new data lakehouse, and we're putting all our data into that, and we've got a Power BI reporting suite that sits alongside it, and starting to explore sort of use of AI and ML to improve our productivity, efficiency, but even think about product as well. And that sort of overlaps with the final piece of our responsibility, which is around, I've got a group of technical product owners who are responsible for the development of our clinical trials database. So working with software developers, in-house, some in-house, but mainly externally at the moment, to develop that. So in terms of who we are, then Hanson Wade gives some concept there. We're essentially we're sort of a provider of information products and services, mainly to the life sciences industry. We do some work in construction and HR as well. And the products and services themselves are essentially conferences. We're a conference organizer at heart. We've also built a clinical trials database, which I've just mentioned, alongside doing some market research and stood up expert networks of sort of key decision makers across, particularly in life sciences, in the pharma and biotech industries. Challenges and motivations. I thought about this. I've got lots of challenges, but they're probably the same as everybody else's in reality. One of the big ones I would say is just trying to get good local engineers who are happy to come into our offices in Victoria. We are hybrid working, as you can tell. I'm sitting at home today, but I've been in 3 days this week, and we value that in-house, face-to-face relationship quite highly within the business, and we're now starting to mandate people in on days and stuff, and finding engineers who are willing to do that isn't so easy. That's the challenge. The motivation for me, though, is just data. I'll be honest with you. We use our data a lot already. But for me, having this year and through the course of 23 built our lakehouse, we are, I'm very excited about the opportunities that data offers us as a business, not just for knowledge and insight internally and how we can better improve the business we've got, but actually product itself and how we can start to commercialize and monetize some of that data more.
Do you know what I was gonna kind of ask and mention the data, because I think a lot of companies are going on a similar journey to what you've been on. So you're building a warehouse and turning that into insights, but the real benefit is monetizing it in the future. And I think sounds like a really good journey that you're on. I know it's painful because I've been there, but I think the benefit for the business in the long term is really good. So I'm really glad you're doing it. It's really nice to have fellow techies on the call that are going through the pain, but also enjoying it at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting area. Data is fascinating at all levels, sadly.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Sandeep. So just a quick overview. By the way, have you got a nominated restaurant? Should you win the cash prize, which I'm going to confirm shortly? Sandeep, have you got a restaurant that you will be spending your winnings at?
Yeah, it is House of Flavor in Reading City Centre.
Great, thank you for that. And producer James will be, for those of you watching this on YouTube, will be flashing these restaurants up on the screen. Jeremy?
My restaurant nominated would be a restaurant called Babylon in Rains Park. And if I don't win, I'll be consoling myself with a cup of coffee at Three Apes, also in Rains Park.
Lovely. Nice plug for the coffee shop as well. Fantastic, guys. Just to reiterate, by the way, James again will be flashing. We're going to do £50 on this one. We normally do $50 to encourage you to get out more, but as you're both based in the UK, we're going to go for £50. So that is the cash prize on offer. 3 questions. First one to answer 2 correctly will win. Because of our low-tech setup here, Jeremy and Sandy, simply call out your name if you think you know the answer. If it's wrong, we will pass it over. So we have 3 categories. Who am I? Computer accessory. Quite an interesting new category that I've slipped into this one. And spacecraft. Again, we haven't had one of those before. Sandy, I'm going to ask you the questions are numbered 1 to 3. Which number would you like to start with, sir?
2.
Number 2. Okay, here we go. Good luck, guys. This is the computer accessory one, by the way. Doug Engelbart was the inventor of this particular computer accessory. The first version of which was wooden. What computer accessory might that be or have been?
Hard disk?
Jeremy?
Sorry, go ahead.
Now, I don't know who called that first. So I'm going to ask for a bit of honesty here. Jeremy, I'm going to take you because you were the first person I heard. What's your answer?
My answer is going to be the mouse.
It is the mouse. Sandeep, was that also going to be your answer? No. Well, that's very kind of you, very honest of you. Jeremy, fine answer, 1-0. We've just completed the quiz on episode 1 where neither of them got any right, which was good because they split the winnings, but I'm pleased that someone has got one of my questions right. So thank you for that. Jeremy, 1 or 3?
I go 1.
1. Okay. Well, this is Who Am I, which is always my favorite, as everybody now knows. So this is an individual. I'm going to give you some build up to who it is. He had a Syrian father. He was adopted shortly after birth and dropped out of college after 1 semester. He was first employed by Atari before setting up the company that's made his name.
Is it Bill Gates?
Is it
Bill
who?
Gates?
It's not, Sandeep. No.
Is it Sergey Brin?
No, it's not. So I was going to then continue to explain.
Okay.
He set up the company that made his name, which he left for 12 years, during which he invested in Pixar.
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, that's the one. All right. So it does leave us, excitingly, it does take us to the 3rd question, because I don't like to leave any of these questions out, having researched them so thoroughly in the 10 minutes before the show started. So we've got question number 3, and Jeremy at the moment 1 up. This is spacecraft, which was named after, so please name this spacecraft. It was named after the father of the scientific method. It was launched in 1989 to observe Jupiter. Any answers, guys?
It's not Atlantis, not Pathfinder, right?
No, Jeremy. You've got it in the bag now, Jeremy. So you can just throw out a random answer.
Yeah. I was just like Eclipse, but it's clearly not. I forgot.
No, it's Galileo.
Galileo, right? Yes.
Galileo. Gentlemen, thank you. Jeremy, we will be organising £50 warm pounds for you to spend. So I don't know whether the coffee shop still gets your custom, but certainly the restaurant will.
Probably Babylon. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Sandy, thank you very much for competing. Great quiz.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Well, there we have it, Sanjay. Our audience, who are all extremely sophisticated, will have noticed that we are, of course, wearing the clothes that we were wearing with the intro. So we are recording this plug well after the quiz took place. But all I'm pleased to see is that someone got a question right.
100%.
Yes, that's all I aim for with these quizzes. But listen, thank you everybody. I hope you enjoyed that, and I know that a lot of the interest in those quizzes is actually the background to the people taking part. So thank you to Sandeep and Jeremy. And without further ado, it is, of course, Sanjay's Fireside Chat.
Hey, Luca. Thanks for joining me. This is going to be an interesting conversation. So, a bit of background for our listeners and our viewers. You're a successful CTO and founder. You sold your business. So, brilliant success, early doors. You then went to become a head of engineering in a big organization, which again, amazing success. And then you decided you got that founder's itch again and you needed to do another side hustle. So that's what I really want to get into, having a side hustle and going on that journey, because I think that's very pertinent for our listeners out there. So I'm going to jump straight in. You had this successful job, right? Head of engineering for a big organization. You had sold a business as a CTO, which, we all want to do as technology leaders. Why did you start a side hustle? Were you not tired?
That's a good question. First of all, thank you for having me, Sanjay. I'm excited to have this chat. So what may I answer? I mean, my first answer would be that I've always had side projects, or at least I've had side projects for a long time, not necessarily with the goal of making money out of them. I think there is something just with the thing of building something on your own, spending some time scratching your own itches. So I always, at least for many years, even when I was back as a founder, as a CTO at my startup, I would get up earlier, maybe in the morning to do some things on my own, might be, a small app to play a game with friends or other things. And this would be just for learning maybe some new tech or solving a problem that I would have and stuff like that. And then, with the refactoring, the opportunity came because this was another case of scratching my own itch, because being a CTO and has been a leader in my first job out of university, and I didn't know how to do anything, and I had to learn everything from, how to write software. I mean, I got my master's in computer science, but then I didn't know about modern frameworks such as Rails and stuff. But especially, I didn't know how to run an engineering team. And that was very tricky to figure out because there was not much reliable and high quality content online. So I struggled with that. And when this startup journey kind of wrapped up, got a little bit more time for thinking, I was already a big reader of other newsletters that helped me professionally. And so I thought I could try writing something about my own experience, basically the things that I would have loved to read when I was younger, and so I started this. And of course, I would lie if I didn't think in the back of my mind that this might turn into some kind of business thing eventually, because I had already the example of other successful newsletter writers that had made it into a full-time thing. But I said to myself, I would be happy even just if this helped me clear up my thoughts about many things, act as a bit of reflection. So I set myself to do this, also enjoying the journey, not thinking about an outcome. But then, of course, things went very well and allowed me to do this full time.
Brilliant. And I think, so that's what I want to jump into next, really, because, you say you started writing the refactoring newsletter in your spare time because you had to exercise that thought. And when I talk to a lot of people that have started side projects, it's always about a passion or a gap or a problem that they're seeing. Yeah. And it's really that kind of gets them motivated to do that. So, okay, so you started this journey. When we spoke earlier, you said you were waking up early and you were spending a couple of hours writing in the morning before doing a full day's work, which is brilliant. You got some success. I mean, I'd like you to tell people about the success as well in a second, because when we had a quick chat earlier, it was like, wow, that kind of blew up. But my question is really when, how, and why did you decide to go full time and leave your paying job? And what was, I guess for our listeners, what was the kind of tipping point for you? What helped you make that decision?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked this question, because sometimes, I speak with many people who are, indie hackers or people who have side projects and think about doing this full time. And you read many takes online about people who say you had to do the leap of faith. You have just at some point to leave the rest of the things you're doing and trust that things will gonna be okay. In my experience, I don't agree that it has to be like a disruptive thing that causes you anxiety, and financial distress. Because I really believe that as of today, 2023, almost 2024, we can be productive and deliver a lot of good things, even by working a little amount of time. So I think for your own... For avoiding, too much anxiety and distress, you can definitely get to the point where you validate that you can make some money out of whatever side hustle you have, so that if you're quitting your full-time job, turning it into part-time or quitting altogether, you're not in a situation of hardship. And even when you quit your full-time job, for many people, it's like a black or white thing. It doesn't have to be. You can do some consulting on the side. You can still work like less time with the same company, for example. You can think about many things to make whatever transition you have in mind gradual. Because I'm stressing this because what many people do not realize is that when you work by yourself, I'm thinking that the side hustle is like an individual thing that you're built by yourself. When you work by yourself, you have like a lot of stress because you don't have like other people to bounce ideas off with. You have a lot of insecurity sometimes. And so if you, on top of these things, you also have to add the thoughts about financial stuff, it can become very hard. So in my case, I was lucky, of course. Refactoring was a success, but Refactoring was already generating some money when I quit my other job through sponsorships. It was not a paid newsletter by the time. So what I did was, my train of thoughts was, if I can do this, if I start doing this full time, I can make it a paid newsletter, would make a good story, like people can support my work because now it is my official work. I can continue having sponsors, and maybe I can do some consulting on the side, even to keep me grounded in a way, that I'm not just a writer in an ivory tower that doesn't know how the world thinks anymore. So I continued working like 20% of my time as a freelancer, as an advisor to my same company as before, and then to a few other companies. And then I added the paid memberships to the newsletter, continued doing sponsorships. And I wouldn't say that from day one I was making the same amount of money, but quite close. And so it was never a stressful thing for me. And that came from the fact that first, I was able to do that gradually. And second, I let's say doubled down on that because I knew there was a strong bottleneck that would turn into a financial reward if I could overcome that. That is, if I could make this full time, I could make it a paid newsletter, and that would have likely converted some readers, and so have increased the revenues and so on.
Brilliant. And just for our listeners, before you decided to semi-quit your full-time job, what was the ramp up of the newsletter? So you went from 0 to what? And then once you quit, what was the next? Because that's what blew my mind, right?
Yeah. So in the first year, the newsletter got from 0 to 10,000 subscribers. It was a totally free newsletter. Then I launched the paid membership when I quit my job in November 2021. And many people had told me by that time that mind you, when you make it paid, so you paywall a lot of the content, the growth will slow down and stuff like that. It didn't really happen because the second year went better than the first one because it got to 25,000 subscribers. And now, after another year, we are at the end of the third year, we are at 60,000 subscribers. So like the growth has been like hockey stick real.
Yeah. And I just love that story, right? I love that story. And that blew my mind. So you are your typical doubling every year. I love it. So I want to just kind of go back because, the really good bit of advice that I caught there was, you don't have to do that leap of faith. You listen to lots of people, you listen to lots of stories about unicorns, and this is not it's a typical story, right? People have a job, they do a side hustle, they take a leap of faith, and all of a sudden their company's worth $1 billion.
Yeah.
But your approach I really like. It's more doable, right? So, and you gradually shifted over.
Yeah, and I think this is even more true today than it was like 2 years ago, because today as an individual, you have so much leverage. I mean, you have AI, ChatGPT, better tools for doing anything. So I think that putting yourself in a situation where you have already validated many things before doing the so-called leap of faith, it's even healthy. I mean, because if you couldn't pull this off, let's say, by working a couple of hours per day, it's not like when you move to work 8 hours per day, problems magically solve by themselves. So you have to know exactly how you would use the additional time. Because it's like when you hire people for your company. I mean, I'm a believer of hiring people when you feel the strong bottleneck in something and you know for sure that there is a good return on investment, in hiring somebody to do something. And that is true also for yourself. I mean, if you're adding 4 additional hours per day, for example, to this, what are you doing with that? So it's sometimes the answer is trivial, sometimes it is not. And I think with 2 hours a day already, you can do a lot.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, right? It's being conscious about the time you're going to spend, right? And not burning yourself out. And again, I think that's really good advice. So I kind of want to jump into the slight switch, right? And this is probably scary for some, but I think this is a story that probably resonates for many others, where you went from a developer, a leader of a technology department, to writing. And yeah, okay, you're writing about technology and you're writing about things that you struggled with and it's very pertinent to your role. But you're not writing code, you're writing, words and a newsletter and articles.
Yes.
And how was, ignore the fact that it was a newsletter, but you've got a complete mind shift. How did you need that time, the 3 years, to do that transition as well? And how's that going?
And in hindsight, this change of lifestyle was the real leap of faith, I think, that I did not realize at the time, because I was very focused on figuring out whether financially this would make sense, I can tell you. But I took for granted that I would enjoy doing this all the time, which I do, but it was not a given. I mean, it could turn out like something that I wouldn't like doing all the time, because, when you think about it, there are many things in your life that maybe you enjoy doing like 30 minutes a day, but you would enjoy doing them 8 hours a day. So it changes completely. It turns out I really like the lifestyle, how I'm spending my time doing research and writing and meeting many people, because one thing that is, I think, underestimated about writing online is that writing is kind of like networking for introverts, because instead of having you reaching out to people, it makes people reaching out to you drawn by your writing. So I get to know many people like you, having good conversations. So this is a part that I very like. But of course, I miss things of when I was a CTO, or when I was an engineering manager and managing a team every day, literally. I mean, I miss the energy of working with the team on a product, of seeing people growing, coaching people. I miss these things all the time. I would say that so far, I mean, the upsides for me are higher than the downsides. I'm happy to do this. But it's not like it's 100% positive. It cannot be, because it's so different.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to the missing the CTO bit in a second, because that's definitely a place that I want to go. I just want to finish up on this area, because I find this really fascinating, right? And so you created your newsletter, you gradually moved over. At some point, you kind of went full-time or near enough full-time to,
yes,
that's your job and that's your income and that's your 8 hours a day. So I've got two questions. So the first one is, did you take a product mindset and find a product market fit? Or did you take a different approach to kind of seeing, gauging success?
I think one of the things that helped me with growing this is bringing the founder's mindset of creating a product into the newsletter thing. So I've never seen this as a creator thing. I mean, as Luca, Luca writing stuff, I've always seen this as refactoring. That is, it's a product on itself. So I track metrics and KPIs and growth and stuff like I would do with an internet product. And that comes from how my brain is wired after 10 years of running a startup. But I think that has been healthy because, first of all, I think it's healthy to decouple your own persona, from the product itself. I think that's a trap of many creators. Then it's hard, to separate yourself from the product. But then I think you have kind of an edge, if you're able to run this as a business, keeping track of KPIs and being disciplined at that. Short answer is definitely, I try to run this as a product.
I love that. And I think, again, that's just great advice hearing it from you, where, if you are, whether it's a side hustle or you're just doing a career shift, that background in technology, writing code, developing software, whatever it may be you've done in technology, grounds you in everything else that you may go and do in the future. And I love the fact that you're proving that by going from writing code to writing, articles and blogs and newsletters and so on. And that's, for me, that's completely 180 degrees shift. But I love the fact that you're still using the same mindset.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that some of the biggest opportunities in life for ourselves come from when we are able to recognize that we can be at the intersection of different things and approach things from a slightly different angle, that is not accessible to many people because of our unique experience. The fact that I'm a founder and now I'm a writer. Many writers have not been founders. Many founders have not been writers. So the intersection of that is very small, and that creates an opportunity. And I think that when you look hard enough, almost everyone has this kind of unique intersections about things that we love. Whether you are an athlete who also writes code and can create something for other athletes. There are many examples. And when you can ask yourself, why should I do this, I myself, and you get a strong answer for this why question, why you're well positioned for doing that, then it's something you should go after.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think trying to figure out your why, and then maybe your businesses and products why, that's such a good answer to, creating a side project, because I think that, talking about that intersection, again, I think that boils it down to the reason why you may want to take that leap of faith, because it's so important to you and who you are, irrespective of if that can make you an income or not.
Yes.
So I really like that. So just before I close on this area, I've got one question, right? So you are a founder, you've done this side project. This is now your day job. Have you still got an itch? Is there another side project looming in the background, or are you just going, no, this is it. This is me for now?
I'm thinking because, one of the things that I noticed is that, I do such a different thing from before that kind of shifted my own perception, my identity. Now when people ask me what you do for a living, it's hard to answer that I'm a writer. I don't know what to say. But I'm kind of, making peace with the fact that I'm less of a technologist, more of a writer, more of a creator. Okay. And that, and so when I think of side projects, I come up with ideas about different things that are closer, to this other, space. And so I'm trying to figure out things that have, like we said before, have a strong answer of the question, why me? Why should I do this? Because I'm well positioned to do that. I don't have a strong side project that is always the same, like 2 hours a day, like right now. But I got so many ideas, for example. I'm thinking, for example, one of the greatest books that I loved what is the Phoenix Project, which is a book about engineering management. It's like a novel for non-fiction book. And I've been thinking maybe I can write a business novel like that. Putting together articles for the newsletter. I've written more than 150 articles, and I can do something like that. Or I can start doing something with video, which I've not really done a lot. I'm a creator, but mostly in writing, so I can explore other angles and take the experience of the newsletter into doing something even completely different. I don't know yet, but I'm curious that now if I am like a T shape, I have a very broad horizontal leg of the T now, and I can try different things.
I love it. I love that you've still got this founder's itch, and it's just there. And I love talking to guests like you because I see it in your eyes, and I love it. I really, really love it. So I'm gonna go back to something that you touched on a little while ago, where you miss some of the things that you did in your previous life. So, I guess my question is, do you miss being a CTO? Would you ever go back? Is that a thing that you would go back and do?
That's a very tough question to answer because, I don't trust myself being able to anticipate whether I would enjoy going back to something like that or not. Gut feeling right now is that still the kind of flexibility and being able to work by myself, plan my time exactly, and creating things still trumps probably the excitement also that comes anyway from running an engineering team. But you never know. One thing is that maybe the fact that I have always been a founder, except for a small part of my professional life, has kind of wired my brain in a way that I wouldn't say makes me unemployable, but probably the first thing that comes to my mind, if it's not refactoring, is starting another startup, for example. That is something that I think. But I keep things open because, if you had asked me 3 years ago, I would have never thought that we would be talking and I was like a full-time writer. And so just like that, I think we should not restrict our identity, our idea of ourselves too much, and stay open to whatever we can become, let's say.
That's great. And I think that's so true to everyone, right? Don't have preconceptions, follow the journey, be on the journey, and be true to yourself while you're on that journey, right?
Yes, totally.
I love that. Okay, so I have one final question. So we've dug into a lot, and I think really what I want to boil my final question down to is, can you give one bit of advice on anyone, similar situation to you, in the sense that they've got this itch, they've they've thought of an idea of a side project. Maybe they've started playing around with it in their own time. But the advice is, how do you start that journey? I'm not talking about taking it full time, but how do you start taking it seriously and turning it into a thing? And what's the mindset that you're going to need as you go on that journey?
Yeah. So one thing that I want to answer first is why even people should do this, because many people maybe have this itch that they want to scratch, but they think maybe it's not worth it. Maybe, I mean, I'm already stressed with, my work and life. I have so many things to do. I mean, why should I even bother doing this? And I think it's really important to have side projects. So it's strong maybe to say that everyone should have good side projects, but for me, they really changed my life, not just because now I'm working off something that started as a side project, but I think getting into that mindset of owning something that you're building, that you're figuring out by yourself, that maybe it's a problem of your own. I mean, creates such a good flywheel for your life. Even when you're when you think you're distressed from work, having a creative outlet on the side that you do just like 1 hour a day, it's like a safe space that even improves your work-life balance counterintuitively, because it rescues you from thinking about work, for example, or thinking about hard things, and it's also something that possibly lets you see the impact of doing something, of solving a problem, even if it's just for yourself, as opposed to sometimes, we don't get that much satisfaction from work. We don't see that much impact. We may feel like a cog in the wheel, while instead the side projects really rescues you from that. And even if the project ends up not being successful in the sense of, revenue generating, if it creates the habit, it is successful. I mean, I had the fact when I told you that I would get up early in the morning, I didn't start doing that for the newsletter. I started that like a couple of years back, probably, for building actually a mobile app to play fantasy football with friends. And that totally bombed. I mean, we never used that. It turned out to be way harder than we thought. But then after I quit that project, I kept the habit. I would just do different things in that same slot of time. So that is for the why. Then coming to the how, that is your actual question, I can tell you what worked for me, because I know for a fact that different things work with different people. So I can just tell my story. That is, for me, it works working on it regularly, like every day or so. And I think the explanation for that is that whenever you jump in a project, it's like you have to load some context into your brain. And if you do that every day, it's easier. It's easier to jump back into whatever you're doing as opposed to spending like half a day altogether once a week. Also because in half a day, like 4 hours, you're not as productive as in 4 separate hours. I mean, you lose time. And when you have 1 hour, you can be very focused and that. And so for me, it worked finding my, let's say, golden hours. I mean, a moment of time during the day where I know I'm very productive. I'm not exhausted and stuff. And I also know I don't have to be, responsive to other people or interruptions. I know I will not be interrupted. So for me, it was early morning. I could zoom in that thing 100%. So, I mean, a short advice would be scratch your own itch, because even if it's not successful financially, you have solved the problem of yourself. So good job, and do it every day or so. That is really what probably is the best advice from my experience.
I love it. And I think, keeping it to those 2 simple points, scratching the itch, making it pertinent to you and not about money. I think, and it was interesting that you didn't really speak about the financial reward. You actually spoke about the gain, the personal gain.
Yes.
And it sounds like that's why it's become possibly so successful, right?
Yeah, I think that, even speaking more broadly than financially, than a financial outcome, I think in general, outcomes are important, but it's important, especially for these things that you do all the time, to put yourself in a condition where you enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy doing that, because otherwise you're not going to make it, because we have already so many things going on in our lives. We have family duties, we have our jobs. I mean, if that hour a day that you spend on something on your own doesn't give you energy back, as opposed to taking energy away, then you're not going to get even the financial rewards eventually, because most side projects are long games. I mean, they require you to stick with them for a long time. So you have to optimize for your own comfort, for your own happiness. Otherwise, you will not be able to follow through the long game, let's say.
I love it. And I think that, Luca, is a great way to end this episode. Thank you so much for sharing with us all. I found this really fascinating. And when we spoke before, I found it really fascinating straight away. So thanks for spending a bit of time with us. And we'll speak soon.
Thank you. Thank you again, Sanjay, for having me. Really happy about this, and talk soon.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And what a great interview. I've got a lot of love for Luca, apart from the pizza episode. And I tell you what I particularly love about his achievement is that, from my perspective, is he's built his community through his own expertise and knowledge, but just consistency and authenticity. For me, is what's really driven Luca's community. And I know that from people who are part of the community, Refactoring, but I think that really comes across every time I speak to him.
I think so. And for me, that, like I said, that was the big thing, the consistency of setting some time aside every day and just doing it and growing it slowly. And I think we could do that on anything that we do. And what a lovely guy.
Super. Thanks to Luca, and we have a lot of time for Refactoring and recommend it highly to anybody interested. So listen, we're going to wrap up with our listener may recall that in the previous episode we had a Limerick challenge with ChatGPT, which I think you enjoyed. I think our listener enjoyed. But do you know what? This week, with this episode is really interesting, Sanjay, for reasons I will explain shortly. ChatGPT has refused to compete with me for this Limerick. Yep.
So I'm gonna
I've beaten it. So I'm going to read the Limerick, and then I'm going to very quickly, before we close, because people are clamoring to leave now, as I move into my Limerick phase, I'm going to read the Limerick and then explain very briefly why ChatGPT, the mighty ChatGPT, refused to compete with the humble CEO of CTO Academy. So are we ready for the Limerick? That's what I want to ask the audience. The CEO, who was more a dictator, displayed the warmth of a refrigerator. Cuts mean we need to change course. Now it's all open source. Oh, the shock when he finds the cost will be greater. That's a slam dunk. I can tell by your immediate response. So very briefly, the reason why GPT wouldn't do one, it didn't like the fact that I used the words CEO and dictator in the same sentence.
Oh, I thought it was going to be the open source bit of it.
No, they said we're not prepared to respond to that phrase. So there we are. ChatGPT is more warm to CEOs than most of their own CTOs. Let me leave you with that thought. Okay, good to see you. Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye, everyone.
Me, My CTO and I was a CTO Academy production with special thanks to our guests, Sanjay Mistry, Luca Rossi, Sandeep Kaur, Jeremy McDonald, and special thanks to our wonderful sponsors, RP Analytics, Rob and Liam, and the team for all your data professional recruitment needs. Grazie e arrivederci.